Modern Relics. I'm Angel. He's Lucky. What's going on? We're back.
How much? Yeah.
Yeah.
We are back. Sorry for the lost week there, guys, but stuff happens.
Yeah,
We're
it's
human.
true. There's also, I had to travel for work. And I think it's a good thing, since we're just briefly going to touch on it, the chilliness of the weather, particularly last week. Like down here, it got to be 29 degrees, which is brutal for this area, but enough to make me like turn on the plumbing for the pool because it's all above ground piping. I'm like, I don't want it to burst. So no burst pipes, thankfully, which is good. I get to Seattle. I step off the plane. It's 14 degrees. I'm like, oh, I want to go home. Didn't really snow a whole lot, which was great. Pretty gross. It's like that wet, muddy, slushy-ish kind of,
nasty snow.
Yeah, just absolutely gross.
It's like hobo snow.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, it was like I wouldn't eat any of this snow.
Nope,
not even a little bit. But then I spoke to your son on the internet. I was merging onto the information superhighway. I caught him hitchhiking. No, he said it got to be like minus 13, 14 degrees, something like that over by you.
Yeah.
Dude,
for a while, for like a week.
Even the birds fly south for the winter, man. What the hell?
Yeah, we actually got into the double-digit negatives for at least 4 or 5 days, almost a full week. It was brutal, and it hovered roughly around there in the zeros for a while after too. So, but I mean, we went up to a friend's house who lives north of like Hayden in Athol, and it was like minus 24, and I could be outside to go vape or whatever. I'd go outside, and I mean, by 90 seconds in, you're like, I'm gonna die. Yeah, and you like have to go back inside.
My thoughts
it's just
hurt.
So bad.
Yeah.
So, do not recommend. Highly unadvisable to spend time in negative temperatures. But I mean, the whole country was like that. Like it was hard to find a space on a weather map that wasn't just covered in ice crystals,
Well,
so
and I'm fortunate my flights weren't canceled, but there were a bunch around me, both on the way in and on the way out, that were. And just everyone's furious, and understandably, they've been putting up with travel. It's cold everywhere you go. They just want to be at home and whatever. But it was a mess, man. It was a mess.
Yeah. Other than the frigid temperatures that are typically, I mean, if you're comfortable living within the Seattle area, it's typically fairly hilarious when either snow or ice hits that area, because the video reels just come pouring through of just one after the other, cars and people just sliding down every incline that city has to offer. And so other than the cold temperatures and the hilarity that probably ensued, how was your time there?
Tales from the PNW, huh? Things I've noticed,
because I don't envy you going there.
Things I've noticed right off the bat: protesters seem to go inside when it's that cold.
Fair weather protesters.
There was not as much rigor around standing outside and holding up Interstate 5 traffic as they've done for the last couple of months, demanding ceasefires or equality for stuff, or I'm angry because of reason A or B. So I noticed when it's that cold, protesting goes way down. I think there's a correlation you'll find. Other things, I found it really interesting that I was asked by almost everybody I talked to up there if I missed living in Seattle. Don't you just miss it here? Like, no,
really?
I don't. And they were genuinely shocked. Like, and I was like, but look around. Like, not just the weather, it's brutal. It's one of the main reasons I left, one of the big three. But like, look around. Objectively, is this like comfortable to you? Is this the city you enjoy living in with all the stuff going on? I mean, there's a lot, and I'm no longer in it. I'm watching it on the news.
Yeah.
And the answer unilaterally was like, it just kind of is that way now. Ho hum. I'm like, that's why I left.
Frogs in a boiling pot of water, man.
That's why I left.
The indifference. You left for the indifference of people's ridiculous living situations.
You don't care, and you just perpetually let it happen to you. Like, that's why I left. And I think it was kind of eye-opening. I know I found a way to be less abrasive than that, but it was just like, there it is. Exactly what you said, And a couple of people were a little turned off by it, but a couple of people, it was like, oh, yeah, actually, I can see where you're coming from. Truly.
Yeah. I enjoy peace. I enjoy harmony. I enjoy low crime rates. I enjoy not stepping over syringes. I enjoy being able to go out at night.
You can ride the Metro bus and you probably won't get high on fentanyl where I live.
Right. Yeah.
Little things.
The cost of living. I mean, do you want me to roll it out? Do you want me to roll the scroll out for you of all of the things? I mean, how are you? It shocks me that other people were shocked. I thought people would be like, yeah, I guess. No,
they were literally
too.
Kind of like, and genuinely just rip-roaringly shocked. And what's funny is I was filing my taxes.
Seattle?
Yeah. What? Collective pearl clutching and shivering.
We're the shining Emerald City. How could you?
Yeah. Like, so I was working with my tax person just before this call. And they, my tax person and I go back a long time. And she said, I had to do a triple take at your property taxes. She's like, you son of a bitch. Do you know what it costs here in Seattle? I was like, I do. That's another reason why I left. She's like, I literally had to look the book up for last year to make sure that your numbers were right. She's like, wow. It's like, well, get some, Sorry, other millennial age people that feel victimized and will never buy a home and can't just make some compromises. Change your life. Get the fuck out. Figure it out.
Yeah, get out of those places.
You can still draw breath elsewhere. Just go elsewhere. So honestly, that was pretty much it. I mean, I was heads down at work the whole time. It was cold as fuck. It started raining toward the end. But yeah, not a lot of protesters when it's that cold. People shocked genuinely that I could turn my nose up at the beauty and wonder that is Seattle, Washington. And then those that did break through, and I mean, I had the same conversation. I'm not exaggerating, 9 or 10 times with people that I ran into, between meetings, whatever. And it was, the folks that kind of connected with it were like, oh, okay. Yeah, actually I can totally see why one would do that. And I'm like, my mortgage is like $200 more than my rent was on a 300 square foot apartment.
Yeah.
And I'm paying an absurd amount of RTA excise tax. This isn't a Washington podcast, but those are tales from Seattle. Just quick observations. I didn't have any major run-ins.
I have a connective story that just occurred to me right in the middle of the cold snap. And I'm talking about we had already at the shop had already visqueened up the windows and are trying to keep our heat inside. We're about to close. It's about 9 o'clock and these two ladies come in. And if anybody knows this area, being able to point out and identify people who aren't from the area is fairly easy to do.
Yeah.
And so, two out-of-town ladies obviously come walking through our door, and they're like, "Hey, are you guys open? Do you have time?" And we're like, "Well, actually, we're about to leave, but what were you looking to do?" And they ended up starting talking to them. And I mean, instinctively, I was like, "Hey, where are you guys from?" Because I knew that they weren't from here.
Sure.
And they're like, California. I was like, don't worry. Half this town is from California. We're from California. Like, don't worry. It's fine. Yeah. All right. Get the rope. But they were a mother-daughter,
Yeah.
and the mother, the age difference was minimal enough that I thought that they could have been sisters, you know, but like the mom was probably in her mid 40s to late 40s, but didn't look it
Sure.
due to
Good vitamins and shake weight.
good filters.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so, but apparently the daughter was going off to college, and this all got explained through the conversation. And she, living outside of Pasadena, was looking to relocate her life. And this was one of the areas they were coming to visit because she's unmarried. She's her only kid's going off to college. She's like, now's the time. Now's the time I can just sell my house and find a new, more relaxed area to live, thinking that you know, obviously leaving due to the crime, due to the cost, due to all of those things, which she ended up divulging all of that. But, you know, what she's looking for, what she thought this place was like a Vail or a Boulder, Colorado, like a ski resort kind of town.
Oh, yeah, delicious.
Right. And she happened to come directly in the middle of one of our most wicked cold snaps that we've had in probably 10 years. And we're like, oh no, it's like this all the time. And she's just like, what? And I was like, oh yeah, no. And
it can snow for 6 or 7 months out of the year here.
Yeah, I was like, it snowed on my birthday, and my birthday is June 23rd. So, you know, and
it's currently the surface temperature of Mars outside while you're having this discussion.
Yeah. And so, you know, she's like kind of going, well, and I was like, I mean, the summer months are great, but don't get me wrong. Do you like nightlife? And she goes, oh yeah, I'm single. I like nightlife. And I was like, then don't move here. I was like, because I was like, you're going to have a hard time finding food after 9 p.m. of any kind. And the food that is open during the regular hours isn't all that great anyway.
And it gets pitch black out at like 4:55 p.m. like in the winter time. So.
Yeah, 4:30, the sun's pretty much down. And I was like, and I'll send you down there tonight because you're staying in like the Riverstone area.
Sure.
But like, I'll send you down there tonight. Go down to Sherman. That's your scene.
That's it.
And that's it. You're going to have 4 bars. That's it. And it's going to be the same people that you see every week. And that's it. Other than that, you're going to have to go over to Spokane, which is essentially the Sacramento of the Pacific Northwest. So like,
God, that's a perfect correlation. It very much is the sack town of the PNW or the Inland Northwest. Yeah.
Well, and then Coeur d'Alene would be like Nevada County. And
Ritzville would be like Oroville.
Yeah, right. And then Seattle, and it's all like you can just pick it up and drop it down a little bit, and then like Seattle is the San Francisco, where Tacoma is the Oakland, and then and then Portland is kind of the San Diego, you know. But like
Portland's the Vallejo.
Yeah. So, but it is essentially the same, you know, geographic kind of situation. But yeah, I was like, and it's gross over there. Like if you think you're escaping the crime and stuff, you're not, by going to Spokane. And turns out she works for a nonprofit for homeless advocacy.
Oh wow.
And I'm like,
Seattle, there's big money in it out there.
Yeah, go that way.
You don't even have to do your job. You could just keep going west.
Yeah.
Tell her, get on I-90, go until there's the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And you've arrived. Yeah.
Done. Set up a tent and you're good.
That's all you need.
Yeah. But
wow, dude.
Yeah. So, and then essentially I talked her into, I was like, if you're going to move to Idaho, the best place for you to move would be Boise. You're going to have all the nightlife and the food, and, you know, you're going to have the kind of downtown stuff mixed with like the outdoorsy stuff that you're looking for, but with a way bigger population, and it'll be more suited to your wants and needs.
Right.
But have you looked at Colorado? And so I think and she ended up coming back the next day to get tattooed, her and her daughter.
Yeah.
But I'm fairly certain we had her convinced that Colorado was the Mecca she was looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I was like, keep moving. We don't need that here.
You know where seems to be the popular drop spot for people leaving the craziness of Seattle and California. That, I mean, 4 or 5 people that I personally know. So I'm guessing it's a boom town.
I think I have an idea.
What's your guess?
Arizona?
No, Bend, Oregon.
Ew.
In the Blue Mountains. Just right in the middle, little country town, just plonk right there. And everyone's twisting their mustache and they're diving into vats of IPA and they're fucking moving out there and they're going to Whole Foods. And that's what they're doing to get a chill environment away from the big city. Cause it's a little too,
Yeah.
like,
we still want our completely progressive leftist kind of political structure, but we want to do it with chickens.
I mean, I took some shots at them. I was like, well, but you put your makeup on and your mask on and you went up to the Capitol Hill Chop Chaz riots and protested about how much cops needed to be defunded and moved on with. And then the second somebody came prowling by your house, you sold it and moved to Bend, Oregon? Okay.
Yep. That's how that works.
Think about that. Just
It is the narcissism of the world not affecting you until it's literally clubbed you in the head.
right.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, this actually
Right.
is a problem.
Oh, we can have cops when your house is getting burgled. I got it.
Right.
I got it.
Yeah. So
Oh, I bought some shit. You're gonna love this.
Oh, I
I
love
think
it
you're
when
gonna love this. This is a
make
ridiculous
purchases.
purchase. I'm renowned for
Perfect.
these.
Yeah.
This, and I got a hardcover one, so I spent big dollars. I bought a book. I haven't bought a book in a long, long time.
Oh, look at fancy pants, Mr. Literate over here buying
Right.
books.
I'm gonna learn you a thing or two on this.
Oh,
This is
I'm open
called
to it.
The Gospel by Gen Z. All right. So
I've
here's
seen clips of this.
Here's a quick story. I'll read you the back cover because I can see it on the photo. Mary was a pick-me girl for God and was simping for him in prayer. When the angel Gabriel appeared and said, "You've passed God's vibe check, and he wants you to be the mother of the main character, the son of the top G." She said, "How can this be since I promised him my body count will always be 0? He said, "This ain't about cuffing season, for only the Holy Spirit will live rent-free in you." So she said, "Bet." And Gabriel left her on red, and she let the Holy Spirit cook. And it's a whole ass book of this shit. I bought this.
Oh my God.
I bought this for $50.
That is a ridiculous purchase, but I'm so glad you did.
Dude, I know. 50 stories taken from the 4 Gospels, translated into Gen Z. Beautiful high resolution classical artwork in every chapter, and a full glossary of Gen Z phrases used and memes referenced in the appendix. This is the masterclass. It's going to be my new coffee table book for around the house. I'm so excited. They were so sold out. I don't think I get this until March 15th. But I got one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's so many things. Like, this is one of the topics we need to bring up with Pastor Jason.
Yeah.
1, but 2, man, just that singular passage you read is so beyond the pale blasphemous.
Yeah.
That like you can't even take it seriously if in fact it was meant to be, which I don't think it was.
No,
but
it's a meme book
it's
for
obviously,
sure.
yeah, it's parody for sure. However,
There's different ballpark and not on the same fucking planet, and I'm pretty sure we're going to a different planet with it as far as messaging is concerned, but it is glorious.
The problem is that in the problem that I'm having with it is that in the clown world in which we live, in which we currently reside,
The people will study this.
yes, and this will be something that actually in 15 years will have legs, and there'll be whole churches built around this nonsense. Right now,
I can't wait
as
for
they
that.
would call it cringe. Like if I was to read this to my children, they'd be like, "Oh, Dad, don't ever do that again."
Yeah.
To be fair, I have very intelligent kids that are not comfortable with the vernacular of their particular peer group. So, but they also are very aware of that these are words that a man of my age and stature should not use, and that it is
yeah,
and that it is for lack of a better term, cringe. And so, but I honestly like, unfortunately, I feel like something that was intended to be parody, such as most of the Babylon Bee stories, tends to all of a sudden create its own reality that ends up becoming something tangible later on. And it's heartbreaking at the same time as being like amazingly hilarious. But I mean, I can't wait until you get this book. I want to see what kind of artwork goes with it too.
I can't wait to explore this. We could even do a miniature story every couple of weeks out of it.
Please, let's do.
Yeah, we'll make it a recurring segment.
That.
We'll get nearly a year's worth of content out of this book if there's 50 stories in it. Yeah, Angel Gabriel appeared and said, "Ayo, you're a real one, and the top G is feeling you." But she thought his compliment was low-key sus and gave him the side eye. So he said, "Baby girl, chill. God sent me to tell you he's passed his vibe check." Yeah, this is going to be the sauce, dude. I can't wait. Cannot wait until March when this book comes in.
Oh, wow. I'm so happy you are a single man with a high income and
just disposable income on $50 Gen Z Bible story books.
I love this about you.
Rarely will I go that nuts on some shit. Normally it's a witty t-shirt, but I was like, okay. I cried laughing. Like I saw that and I was like, okay, this is funny, but it can't be real, because I thought it was just memeing on Instagram, because I have seen a couple of like stories pop up like that. And then I followed a thread that led to a page that led to a book, and it's actually in print. And I was like, this is done. Like I do not care. Done. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Anyway, wild purchases. So we got a few things to talk about tonight. One of which we're going to get into some political stuff, which is great news, because I have my
favorite topic.
My pre-ballad arrived, and I've got some issues with it. So we can kind of walk through that together live, which is great. I just got to make sure my name and address is covered.
But you get a primary this year. We got ours taken away from us, so we do not. We're going to be
majority only. Caucus.
Yep. Idaho's going to
actually have both
caucus in a long time.
We're doing a caucus and a primary, which is why we'll get into it. But let's just do it now. There are candidates missing from the official mail ballot for the presidential preference in the primary election for my county. So a couple things I noticed right off the bat. First of all, there's a very flimsy secrecy sleeve, which I call
secrecy sleeve.
Yeah, I call it a political promise ring. But at the end of it, you get the I voted sticker, which is fantastic. The issue for me is that depending on how you signed up, you get a color card.
Is a secrecy sleeve, is that like the same thing as a Mormon condom?
It is exactly right. But you can see through it, which I think is hilarious. Like if you hold this up to the light, you could 100% tell my party preference, and I bet you I would need to turn that up on the. Oh, you can read through it.
Oh, how nice.
So I've got problems with this. Okay, first of all, I was like, okay, this is a joke. First of all. Then you look at, I am a registered Republican. That should come as no shock to anybody. Then you get a bunch of, hey, do you have questions? Go ahead and scan this document. Here's all the preference sites you can go to, county after county. Okay, that's fine. Official mail ballot, 2024 presidential preference primary election, Clark County, Nevada. Not a caucus. That's a different side of the same process that culminates on the same day. Candidates for partisan offices, president, 4-year term, vote for one. John Anthony Castro. Keith.
Democrat?
Keith, nope. These are all Republican preference primary election.
For president?
Yeah.
Who the hell is Castro?
Right?
And why would... Okay, I've never even heard of this guy.
Keith V. Fulkerson.
What?
Nikki R. Haley, Donald Kjornes, Kjornes, Mike Pence, Tim Scott, Hirsch V. Singh, or none of these candidates.
Well,
and if I don't participate in this, I have to cast for the caucus, which would have included Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, and the other guy, VJ, whatever that dude.
Vivek,
not VJ, Vivek.
Yeah.
And so the offices in the state of Nevada are getting pummeled with emails, phone calls, and letters about who the fuck are these people, because it was not announced until after we received these ballot preference primary election ballots that we're having a caucus and a primary, and that if you don't see your candidate on here, it's because they're probably arguing it out in the caucus, because we don't have very many electoral college votes. And so if anyone wants to supplant one of them, they've got to beat the presidential preference primary election by majority vote to get promoted to that status. What a waste of fucking time. And none of this is confidential. Like,
yeah.
Okay. Appreciate the secrecy sleeve. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff on, like, if you're unable to vote for yourself or someone's doing it on your behalf, which is pretty standard U.S. official election stuff, you know, sign here, declare under penalty of perjury, blah, 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 forge someone's signature over there, have a good day. But you don't need it notarized. So how is this helping it? How is this helping anybody? Yeah, or ID. Imagine if somebody intercepted this piece of mail.
Yeah. There would be no way to verify at all whether or not you, the person it was addressed to, filled it out.
Right. So the complexity is wild. There's zero communication on this, and it's missing a ton of people. And it's almost
everything you do mail-in in Nevada?
No.
Is everything mail-in? Oh, okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have to request mail-in?
Yes.
Okay.
And because I'm apparently new here, they just sent me one. Because I registered with the DMV when I got my driver's license. Yeah. And you can drop your thing in the register to vote, and it tells you which precinct you need to drop your thingy in, because they have numbered precincts. Right. And I got the right one, and they just sent me this stuff. Went, oh, well, you registered as this, so here's your options. Have a good day. And they're like, there's no... And everything on this note, everywhere you look, is also, you're running out of time. Please deliver promptly. Don't miss out. Like, it was so in your face that if I did not see the official election mail seal and the U.S. Postal Service
you would have thrown
graphic underneath
trash.
it, I thought it was trash.
Yeah.
And there's not a name on this page that is earning my vote.
Nope.
Not one.
So what you need to do then is you need to look up online where your elections office is. It's typically the clerk's office of the county.
It is.
And then so go down there and go, hey, I don't want to participate in these assholes, like, because none of these people have my vote. How do I participate in the caucus so that my vote can actually count for something I want it to?
Right.
I want this voided out and me put on the list to do the caucus.
Yep.
And so that's basically the option that you have to do. And anybody in Nevada who's having the same problem as you, do the same thing. Go vote for people who are actually not dropped out or people you've never heard of before.
Yeah. The way I understand it is the PACs are promoting the majority candidates into the caucus, and the winner of that is likely going to envelop the state's electoral college votes and move forward, save for the popular vote when it comes down to the Democrat majority and the Republican majority is what will sway the color of the state more or less. But to even get to the primary, you have to apparently beat a majority mail-in ballot to get promoted to participate with the ringleaders in the caucus, which seems like horseshit that they would have both. Yeah. Like, why not make me read a novel and put everybody that signed up on this presidential election ballot representing the state of Nevada on the same piece of paper? That way I can choose, authorize, and mail it in, or choose, authorize, and drop it off at my election voting spot. Why both? So if you're frustrated about what's going on in Idaho, at least you have one but not both options, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
So yeah, Yeah, essentially it's obvious that it's for the sake of confusion. They'll be like, it's simple. You just have to do these, 9 or 10 steps. It's fine,
Right.
And knowing full well that just the concept of voting in and of itself, for a more simple folk is not as easy. They have a hard time doing it in anything outside of major presidential elections. So the primary is completely lost on most people. So that's why you have such low voter turnouts. Now, when that happens, it's trying to make it as simple as possible for people to show up is the primary goal for the primary. However, man, really easy to screw things up if you make it super complicated because of reason A, reason B, and reason C, that we have decided now to overcomplicate this very relatively simple process.
Here's the other part. Like in almost every state I've lived in, with the exception of this one, generally the packet of information that in my case tells me where to go to stand in line and vote in person, district by district, every single other state, including Washington, gives you a photograph of the candidate, a brief description behind the candidate, like where they came from or whatever they turned in with their bio and their photograph, and it tells you their political majority party. If I just got lazy and penned one in, I wouldn't know anything about them. None of their information is here. I'm required to look that up on Google, I guess. Just not here.
What? Like that level of just like,
you know what I mean though, right? The book you get, and it's got,
all their
I'm
policies
representing
and all.
District 13 and I'm a Democrat and my name's John Smith and I spent 14 years in the military and I'm campaigning on this, and you get like 60 words and a picture and your party affiliation, nothing.
A general outline of who the person is, and what they represent, from what party they represent, or what there's just some type of blurb at least, but nothing.
Also, didn't Mike Pence drop the presidential primary race quite a while ago?
A while ago, not even in
he's on here.
Saying after the first debate, second debate at most. Like he was gone. He's been gone for a while.
Yeah, he's on here.
I mean, in all honesty, the only person who's actually even at the caucus that is, the three guys at the caucus, the only one that's actually even legitimately run. There's only two people that are legitimately running, whether through your primary or caucus, either or.
Right.
There's only two people who are legitimately running, and only one of them who's legitimately got a chance. So what games are they playing with you guys?
I don't know.
Insane.
And while you can't do any of this digitally, you can track your mail ballot by scanning the QR code on the cover of this, by the way.
Oh, how nice.
Cool. The whole thing is so convoluted that I suspect people that are just like, oh, well, there's a name I recognize, and just turn it in.
Right. Have you ever seen a boomer, a retired person, which your state is full of?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a retired person try to operate their phone, let alone scan a QR code?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, come on. Like, I get it that we're trying to kind of bring in younger voters and adapt. I get that. But at the cost of what? At the price of what? Here's the deal. I'm not a big fan of most boomer culture. I obviously could go on and on about that. However, the reality is that those are your landowners. Those are the ones paying the most amount of taxes. Those are the ones who are typically most informed.
Yeah, and I think I am fairly confident this is my preference for the primary election. It is not my actual vote, but it's written dozens of times in this pamphlet of information that I got that you're not allowed to vote twice, blah, 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 blah. So even imagine the people that are taking away from their party's majority vote, if that's who they really wanted, by just humming their way into a possible option they saw on paper. They may be led to believe that they can't vote again because they already did, which is probably not the case.
Yeah.
So because I'm off on Friday, I'll be heading down to my voting office to unfuck this situation. I had to share that because while I think after reading it a handful of times, I kind of put it together, but I'm like, God, when did you print this? Like, I've never heard of two of these dudes. And one of them dropped out months ago, like officially, and he's still on this paper. So what gives? And then I started seeing like news articles like, well, the local voting offices are being flooded because we decided to do a caucus and a primary vote, except for the primary votes don't get to participate in the party majority unless they've won the primary votes, which is why you got a pamphlet that says you need to cast a vote for them so they have the eligibility to fight with the big dogs. What? Like, I don't know, man. Hilarious. But as my first year in a new state that I actually get to cast a vote for a 4-year term president, I was eager to open it up and see what they had for me. I was disappointed.
Yeah. This is actually the first year that my daughter gets to vote.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that weird?
Is she Biden Harris or?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, she's like, all the abortions for me, you know. So, yeah.
Not what I was expecting a retort from you on regarding conversations around your daughter, but okay.
Well,
moving right along.
Her senior thesis is how feminism has destroyed Western culture.
Dude, yes. I want to read this.
She chose it. She's calling it, the title of it is, It's a Barbie World. And
Dude.
So that's going to be her senior thesis that she's been working on.
Have her email that to me when she turns it in. I want to read this.
Yeah.
I'll keep it off the internet, but I want to read it.
I'll have her send it over. So, but yeah. Or maybe we'll just have her bring it down when we come, because it'll be right after graduation when we come see you. So
that'd be sick. Yeah. All right. So more politics, because you guys can't get enough. State of Texas versus Joe Biden. Not a court case, just the way I titled the segment. So my understanding is, because I'm catching up, I've had my head in the sand doing work stuff for 2 weeks, but Texas National Guard took over Shelby Park, Eagle Pass, and they're putting up fences preventing the federal Border Patrol agency from entering the area because Border Patrol is not doing anything to prevent migrants from flooding into Texas from Mexico. And folks that jump the border are being arrested for criminal trespassing, both men and women alike. Arrests are taking place on private land, and it's under Greg Abbott's state declaration of the disaster authority thing, where he's trying to use disaster funds to fight what is pretty much a humanitarian crisis at the border, in addition to... Now, it's being painted... I had to sift through a lot of this, but it was being painted as like misappropriation of executive authority to use state funds to build a wall, but really it seems like
it falls right under that category. It
sounds like the state said, okay, then don't fuck with Texas. We're going to do it our way because we have the authority to.
The legislation of Texas fully greenlit it. That's so for them to try to say Greg Abbott is working outside of his authority is insane.
It's insane, right?
He is backing up his own legislative body.
I read the declaration and the renewal, and it was vetted and passed. So 100%, he didn't just wake up one morning and slide this under the, under the door. But it seems
he's got
tense.
his attorney general on it.
Yeah.
Everyone involved in the process, including the people and their National Guard, have all okayed it. They've all greenlit it. They've all said, yes, we agree with this decision. The federal government is a derelict in duty. They are not doing what their laws say they are supposed to do.
Right.
And therefore it falls upon us through the 10th Amendment and the 14th Amendment to be able to adjudicate our own legal situation here. And they are doing it absolutely legally.
Yep.
But it's a big thumb in the eye to the Biden administration that has now decided, you're impeding on our plans of allowing this, which is funny because then you get Jean-Pierre, the lady, the Biden spokesperson, saying that they're the ones trying to stop everything at the border, that the Biden administration is trying to stop it while actively doing everything in their power to not doing it in full view, not like even hiding it or obfuscating it at all. It's all in full view. And people are like, we know you're lying. We know that we're lying. You're lying. And it doesn't matter. They're just going to lie. But the reality is Texas is now put into a position where the Supreme Court of the United States of America, not Texas Supreme Court, just ruled 5-4 with Roberts and Comey Barrett switching sides to legalize, or I wouldn't even say legalize, but like to allow for the invasion of the United States to happen under the watch of our government. So that being said, Texas has taken it upon itself to say, nope, we're not allowing it. We're standing firm, and we're going to stop this in its tracks, and we're not obeying that, which will, in my opinion, because they've also got other states that are supporting them and sending them National Guard resources.
Florida's one of them, right?
Florida, I believe, either Kentucky or Tennessee has sent stuff over. So they've got. And then just good old boy Texans and the Rangers are all lining up down there. So, and as of today, in defiance, they put up even more razor wire. So we're about to see the extension of the original Civil War, which, unless one of them backs down, and I don't see Texas backing down, and I can't see that the Biden administration or the federal government, especially with the backing of the Supreme Court, is going to do that either, there will be conflict. And the federal government will then, at this point, declare war on one of its own states, which will then lead to the possibility of Texas most likely doing what it's already got in its legislative works right now, which is working on secession. They want to secede, and they have, and they've actually been proposing it through their legislative body. This is going to be the catalyst to that. So that being said, the Civil War, whether historically you want to go down whatever branch of history as to why it happened,
right?
Really, you know, the slavery issue and even the trade issue and the taxation issue and all of that, whatever camp you want to line in on those, all of that was tertiary stories. The reality is that was a line in the sand when states that at that point in time had voluntarily joined the Union of the United States by volunteer, and also contractually saying you can come and go as you please. You are your own mini country. You do not have to be a part of the Union. In fact, you volunteered to be a part of it to fight the original war. And so when the southern states, because of wanting to actually trade their raw goods to England, and the northern states said no, Lincoln was like, you're not doing that. And they went, you can't stop us. We're just going to leave. We're just going to secede from the Union and do whatever we want as per our contract. And it was literally a line in the sand that said, from this day forth, no state will be allowed to leave the Union. And that's what the Civil War was actually about. So we are actually, through Texas, about to see a continuation, not Civil War II, a continuation of the first one that is about to happen. We just had a big couple 100-year pause, and then now we're about to see it light up again for exactly the same reason, but under different circumstances, being that it is to protect the border, which the federal government is obligated to do and has not done it. And it is actually, go ahead.
I can't see why the federal government would have such a bone to pick with Texas arresting and taking care of its own state portion of the border they wouldn't have much of a leg to stand on, save for the fact that they could probably say, well, you, Texas, are now impeding a federal investigation of some kind or impeding us from doing our jobs by not allowing us to connect to the bottom. That's probably the reason that will be the catalyst for the federal side of this. But what's funny to me, and I can't remember under whom, but I do remember it being a big issue, that Arizona State at some point in its past proposed or passed an idea, like some sort of thing where, like, if you were an immigrant, you had to have your papers on you at all times because the police could stop and arrest you for criminal trespassing if they had enough probable cause. And
yeah,
I'm not a big fan of giving the police a license to do anything under probable cause myself, but I remember that ruffling a lot of feathers, and I'm like, well, okay, but all Texas is doing, to my knowledge, the Texas National Guard at this point, is putting a barrier up of human beings and some sort of a wall and saying, if you want in the country, go to the checkpoint and try to get in regularly like everybody else. Just don't do it here. And we're here because the guys that we're also locking out because they can't do their job aren't doing their job. And this is still our state. So we're just going to do this.
They're ushering you in and putting you on buses and shipping you around.
Yeah.
Instead of doing their job.
Was it you that sent me that video from Chicago Airport about all the migrant folks that they're hiding in wings of the Chicago Airport and stuff? That it's just like blanketed off and stuff.
I've seen that video. Yeah.
It's like, this is wild. I don't know if it's true or not. Because
no, it is. It's going on everywhere.
I can't believe anything on the internet, but
Ashley St. Clair has been roaming around airports, actually, just like videoing them. They're just flying them everywhere, and they're coming in by the hundreds of thousands. And even here, we're getting them here in North Idaho. They're all living behind my tattoo shop in the motels, right? So, and this is not going to end well.
No, it isn't.
It's already a massive strain on an already strained economy. And, you know, they aren't asylum seekers. They're not refugees. They're not leaving war-torn countries. They're coming from Guatemala. They're coming from Ghana. They're coming from Africa. They're coming from even the Mexican ones. They're not coming from war-torn countries. They're like, but the cartels. It was like, no, the cartels need people in their cities in order to conduct the business that they need.
And didn't we offer them aid to help remove or mitigate some of the cartel activity through resources and stuff? And they said, nah, that's cool.
I mean, that's a tangled web. I mean, we could go down that, but I mean, we obviously have been funding those cartels through our three-letter agencies for a long time. Which is why we need an open border. That's why they want the open border. It's because they need their business partners to have unfettered access over this border. So, I mean, right now, just in the Idaho State Legislature, they've been debating all day today the fentanyl bill that they're trying to put through, and it's all based around cartel stuff, right? So, you know, and trying to define what is or isn't trafficking. You know, like does a kid who buys, you know, 40 pills for him and his buddies at a party from a dealer, but he brings them to those guys and one of those guys dies, does that kid, that like 19-year-old kid, get hit for trafficking, you know, because he's the one who brought 40 pills to a party? Does that count? So they're debating the nuances of that stuff to kind of really narrow down and try to tackle that bill. But what it all boils down to is, I mean, besides the fentanyl trafficking, the human trafficking, and just the fact that we're literally importing foreign armies into our borderlands. So like all of these,
and tons of new voters.
Yeah, and tons of new voters, right? Yeah. So, and they're like, they can't vote. I was like, but here's what people don't really understand. Some states, they actually can, because there's no ID. So their votes get counted just like yours and mine. So The other thing is that what it does is that it adds to populace. It adds groups of them add to populace. So what that does is that if they ship them strategically to certain areas, it gives them more delegates for after the census goes through. All of a sudden now you've got a whole new swath of people that gives you an extra voting power.
One more chair.
One more chair. So like they know how to work this system with bodies and numbers, and that's what they're doing. They will use them in multiple. It's not just one thing. It's not just two things. They know how to use pockets of giant chunks of people for different things in order to get the results that they're looking for. And they've got a willing army flooding over the lines just for those causes. And yeah. So yeah, no, it needs to be stopped. I'm with Texas. I think they should stand firm. I don't think that they should back down.
Well,
I think that
the Supreme
Court ruling was wrong.
It was wrong. Well, I think one of the central tenets of Republican belief is smaller government. And, this kind of flies in the face of that. If the outcome is then, inflated populace and so forth. I don't understand how nobody can recognize, on the progressive side, that borders are borders for a pretty good reason. Like, do we have to have electric fences like in Jurassic Park? Probably not. But if we had a functioning government and a functioning system of checks and balances and controls that worked, it would be much easier to continue to argue for the benefit of your country if you understand that borders are there for a reason. Otherwise, like, what are we just going to abscond with Vancouver for some reason and be like, nah, it's just North Washington?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's literally the line of logic that it has to lead down. Border, people with, the concept that people have that borders are just imaginary lines. We are people. Of the world.
Yeah. Which is
sorry. No,
ask Venezuela how that worked out when they started taking those rights away and making everybody all one.
Why are we the only country that are subject to that kind of nonsense? Every other country is fine with its sovereignty. Every other country is absolutely cool with strict borders. In fact, aren't we currently in a crisis over in Ukraine and Russia over exactly borders? Isn't that what's going on over in Gaza right now?
Yep.
Like, aren't we worried about borders over there? But over here, we shouldn't be worried about borders. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it used to matter to both sides up until pretty recently. And that should be shocking as well to some of you that really think through that. This wasn't an issue until recently.
Right. And if every single one of those hundreds of thousands of people who are moving over here, who are walking across that border, were strict Catholic Republican voters, guess what? The Democrats would have been throwing up a wall as quickly as they possibly could. So
bunch of hyper conservatives with their shirts tucked in, holding anti-abortion signs, swimming the Rio Grande. Like,
they would have had firing squads. They would have made sure those people didn't come anywhere near our borders.
So I want to stay with this succession thing for a second. Let's play out the worst possible case scenario where we now need to renew our passports because we have to drive through Texas State or Texas landmass.
Yeah.
Who else is going to follow suit? Because I had this running bet, I think with my dad, maybe 10 years ago, if the states broke apart. I'm like, Texas and Idaho would probably be the first to jump out. Idaho now, I'm not so sure about.
No.
But like, what happens?
Trying...
What happens if they break away and they're like, we're not part of the U.S. anymore? Do something.
I think actually it'll be a slower roll than that, but it will start the roll. So basically what will end up happening if Texas secedes, then you'll start to see a lot more shifting in borderlines. So like the great California split or Cascadia will then they'll merge together. They'll go, well, if they can do it, then that set the precedent that we can actually do these things that we've had on the books for 20 years now, where we've been trying to push forward. Like Greater Idaho, which takes over the lower portion of Oregon, or
which
all
Oregon
of those
kind of
things.
wants, right? At least that part of it.
That part of Oregon absolutely wants it.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't actually terribly mind that, due to the fact that that would bring which is why all the Democrats and the rhinos in Idaho don't want it, is because they know, oh, that is a wave of red. We cannot, you know, but it's also hard to argue, because it's like the amount of tax revenue and agriculture that would come from taking that over would be enormous.
Well, imagine,
but it comes with a price.
Imagine if North Oregon, especially on the lower east part of this, or I guess the northeast part of their state, and like half of Washington all the way to the Columbia River on the Spokane side all just jumped on board with that overnight.
Yeah. And that's what would happen, is then all of a sudden that part, you would just have this sliver of Oregon and Washington that was disconnected outside of probably a coastal. Well, because they like the Greater Idaho thing really wants to go to have like this sliver that goes out to the ocean, so they have their own port.
Right.
But you would the western side of Washington and Oregon would then coalesce together, because the eastern side of Washington would vote to then do what Oregon just did with Idaho and just create greater, you know, that whole area, probably call it the Redoubt or something like that. And then, but I think that eventually, I think the next one would be to secede, would either be Florida or California. I think California has reason to want to secede as well, but just for different reasons.
I don't think I would mind that.
No, not at all. But, you know, there's a movie coming out here shortly that's very controversial. It's literally called Civil War, and it's about exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, predictive programming movie, which might be a lot more current than it realized it was going to be. But in that movie, they have a map, and you can look up the map online. And one of the maps is that, strangely, Texas and California team up. Even though they have opposing views, they both don't want to be part of what America has become, because California wants to be far more progressive than America will allow it to be, and Texas wants to be far more conservative and free than America will allow it to be. So they see themselves as like enemies with a common interest. Yeah. So they actually team up against the rest of and there's different factions in this Civil War movie. It's obviously a propaganda film and predictive programming, but it's going to be something that might be a little bit more relevant than they realized.
Yeah, I don't think that's good for really anybody. I mean, if you think it through to like really petty shit, like California, Washington, they would turn everybody's internet off. And then the Midwest and everywhere else would stop feeding them in retaliation. Yeah. And it would be like not really good, except for other world powers would love it.
Oh yeah.
I think China would rejoice at this. I think Russia would get a kick out of it. And this is obviously worst case scenario. Like, we're not sat here trying to promote the idea that secession's a fucking awesome thing or whatever. I can see the reasons why Texas is doing what it's doing to take some semblance of control of the state back, because it's fucking crazy. It's crazy, and I've seen it with my own two eyes, not from the internet. And that wasn't even all the way down to where, like, the crossing over Juarez side of things and over where they're talking about down on the intercoastal and the peninsula sides down there. But bananas shit, like absolutely bananas. And this is just not really good. And I don't understand why the federal government continues to lie about everything and press the issue even harder. Like, at some point, there has to be enough people that voted for this mess that says, okay, like, this is crazy. Like, it's too extreme on both sides from the top down, but what's going on in reality in our cities, at the border, with the fentanyl shit, like, when does humanity wake up and go, this is bad? Like, this person dying on the bus next to me with a needle hanging out of their arm, is not good. And maybe it has something to do with a cartel, or maybe it has something to do with us allowing the continuation of crime and other bullshit to just build. How do you not see that and just baby rage, stand on your hill you're going to die on and scream that it all boils down to racism and capitalism? Like, I dare you to make less sense, but like, wake up. Do all of you listening and watching enjoy the prices for gasoline you're paying? Do you enjoy inflation where it's at and the fact that we're just printing money because we can? Like,
meanwhile, allowing the enormous amount of people coming into this country who are going to just make all of that worse. Just by being here in a way that does not actually, what is it? 2 to 8 years for each one of those people to fully assimilate, and then for what they take and draw off the system to start reversing and going back into the system. I mean, and then times that by a couple million, like how. And
those that are highly strategic about it, having children that are born on U.S. soil, to have that connection point where we have a whole new batch of citizens that were born of this, basically drinking off of the system that's already kind of in shambles, Yeah. Like, it's one of those, I'm not certain Social Security will be around by the time I need to draw on it at this rate kind of thing. But beyond a financial lens, like, this is just humanitarianly bad. Yeah. And it's from shoddy decision making that they continue to persist. And I just don't understand how you can't see that. That's all.
Well, 2 points. One, the one thing that's actually I think I just saw this yesterday, and I think the one thing that will actually start waking up those type of people to this humanitarian crisis doesn't even involve humans. Apparently, along with all the migrant crisis that's going down there, they're leaving thousands and tens of thousands of dogs on the border, and it's become a huge problem. Now, what is going to wake up a left-leaning, progressive, childless, person who's just like, oh, I just have the heart for all the migrants?
Dog poo?
Dogs is what's going to go, there's dogs in crisis down there, let me go down there, let's stop this, it's going to be those people. But ultimately, I think that it's not actually going to be fixed. I think that there isn't going to be enough people waking up. I do believe that this will roll through, this will splinter, and the outside governments will take advantage of it, because from my world perspective, which is a biblical world perspective, guess what's not mentioned in any book of the Bible, including the book of Revelation, when they mention major countries such as China and Russia and Israel?
They don't mention America.
They do not mention the United States because it doesn't exist at that point in time. So I don't think that this is a fixable situation. And I'm not saying that from a black-pilled kind of concept. I'm saying it from we'll stretch it out as long as we can, and we'll fight as hard as we can until the end. But ultimately, I think that the evil that is supposed to prevail will prevail, and it's going to put whatever this landmass will be called after that. It's not the United States of America. And so I think that this might be, 2024, we were talking about the kickoff of this year is going to tell 2020 to hold its beer. I think that this might be the kickoff to that. I mean, there's very rarely in my lifetime been a more contentiously controversial pushback from state government. Because, I mean, think about all the other cities in the country that gave the Supreme Court the middle finger by allowing sanctuary cities within their cities, within their states. They said, this isn't legal. on a federal level, it's not legal on a state level. But we're going to give everyone the middle finger and actually just create these sanctuary cities all over the country, and nothing got done about it. They just went, oh, well, I guess they're going to do what they're going to do because they're kind of on our side of things. So, whatever. But in this particular case, like, this is going to set a precedent that the current federal regime will not allow. They can't allow their mud to be thrown in their face like this. And so they are going to do a heavy pushback. Texas is going to push back with whatever means and help that they can. And there will be actual physical conflict that will, in some way, shape, or form, reconfigure how that part of the country looks. And it's a terrifying thing, but also, like, even in the face of terror, you have to stand on principle. You have to stand on what's right. And I think Texas is in the right on that, and they're going to stand on principle.
I think they're in the right on that too. And I hope we see a seat change in the presidential election coming up here soon. And I hope that it fizzles out because it doesn't need to continue to persist, and that cooler heads will prevail. But yeah, I think if the incumbent gets another 4 years, it's going to get way, way, way worse.
All bets are off at that point.
Way worse. And not just for Texas on this issue, everywhere else.
Yep.
Like,
I would agree with you.
I won't mention on air, but I'd be happy to tell you how much I've personally lost in, like, retirement, future outlook and stuff like that, in faith in the economic structure that we have, in faith in my own neighborhoods prior to moving, just like, and that didn't take too much time. So yikes, dude. Yikes indeed.
Yeah. So yeah, Texas, good luck to you. But I'm very curious as to how all the cards are going to fall on this one.
And I hope Nevada doesn't find a way to succeed either, because we have nothing to offer as a standalone country. Nothing. We're running out of water. We got some silver. That's it. It's a lot of sand. A lot of beautiful palm trees we could offer as an export.
Yeah. You got a lot of military bases too, though.
We do. We have a lot of we have highly experimental government military bases.
Yeah.
If you really want to go down that road. And then a couple big in-service ones that you can actually read the brochure for.
Yeah.
So there's some weird stuff, but other than that, I mean, it's not like we grow corn down here. We're fucked.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to pick a side.
Yep.
Okay, so we got to shift gears because it's pretty heavy. You wanted to talk about Strickland Duplessis. I followed the aftermath, but I knew nothing about the fight going in, and I didn't see the fight. I've just been consuming after effects.
That makes two of us.
Yeah.
That makes two of us, but more of my interest was on the cultural impact of it.
That's what I wanted. I was like, he doesn't really watch fighting. What is this? So,
yeah, and I do like.
Well, I just have never known you to be a combat sports fan, where you're like, let's talk about 297. Where I'm like, I can game with that, but really, I didn't know that.
None of that. Like, I enjoy watching clips of the highlights. I don't need to watch the whole fight. And if it's on, and I will enjoy it. I enjoy combat sports. Do I actively pursue it or follow it? Not at all. When the big names come up
off the podcast, you're not wearing Affliction t-shirts and tap out gear and stuff. Okay, got it.
Although no, I'm not even going to make a joke about wanting to wear those.
Popping collars a little bit. Okay.
My whole interest in this was, one, I saw that, Sean Strickland tends to be a aggressively conservative guy, and to the point where he does not put a filter on himself for anything. And he has made comments about the LGBT community, and he had a really wild interaction with completely inappropriate question during one of the press meetings that the guy tried to get a gotcha on him,
Right.
and it backfired entirely on the dude, and he basically called the dude weak, and he called the guy not only weak, but he said that he was an infection and that he was the enemy and what was wrong with this world, and just went off on the dude, right? Well, so then fight night comes along, and apparently Strickland lost by
A split decision. Yep.
essentially, and everyone on the internet has their opinions about it, but Joe Rogan, Dana White, people who understand the sport very well, both said that Strickland got robbed, that it was actually Strickland who should have won the fight. And then of course other people going, no, you just don't understand the rules. And so I don't really
those
care.
two guys don't understand the rules for sure.
Right. Yeah. So
they're pretty new at this.
So and I've seen the stats, lined up against each other, and I've seen the after pictures of what Strickland looked like and what Duplessis looked like.
It was not a good look.
It wasn't even close.
No.
So yeah, my guess is that the powers that be on a split decision.
Strickland was cut really badly though. Like
up on the head.
He looked like he got shot, and then the after effect, once that was cleaned up, he didn't have too much damage. But anyway, yeah, I saw both and I kind of cringed, like, oh fuck, dude.
But then there was after all of that, there was another interview, but with Dana White, and he was on the stage as he always is, right?
Watch that one. Yeah.
And then the reporter went after him, saying that he essentially Dana White needs to put Sean Strickland on a tighter leash so that he doesn't say things that they don't like. And Dana White's response was absolutely perfect. It was, what are you talking about, a leash? No one is on a leash. That's what free speech is.
Right.
He could say, he's his own
like, I don't
person.
do that to anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really thought, Dana White, take him or leave him. The man understands the concept of a free man, and he absolutely scored points with me on that one. I was like, all right, dude, I fully agree with you on what you just said. You don't even have to like what Sean Strickland was saying. You don't have to agree with him at all.
Right.
You don't have to, the idea that the man is his own person, lives within the confines of the borders of this country, whether or not we agree to where those borders are or not. But the fact is that man has the right to say whatever he wants to say. And it could be vulgar, gross, and inappropriate.
I'm a fan of the sentiment that came out of Dana White. I still don't know about the whole domestic violence stuff in the not so distant past with him. I don't know how that really shook out and all that stuff, but at least on this topic, it's the age old question, do you just hate the artist now because of something they've done years after the fact or whatever? But I completely agree with what he said in regards to the situation. 100%.
Yeah. But as far as the fight goes, I would imagine there's going to be, once they all get healed up and trained up again, there's going to be a very much anticipated rematch of that scenario. But yeah, I think that the voice of Strickland in this time frame is the pendulum swing that I don't necessarily think that the country needs, but that it deserves. When the pendulum swings so far this way, you can't not expect it to go so far to the other side that it then is completely stripped of tact and of nuance. And you're going to get those guys who are like, oh yeah, F you
Right.
and come after you so hard, and that's just the pendulum swing of society, and that's what we're seeing now. And unfortunately, it's necessary. Those type of heavy pendulum swings tend to be necessary in order to create course correction that is necessary.
Yeah, that
When
was
you're
my point a while ago with like, hey, on a long enough timeline, conservatism will be cool because the younger generation that has to rebel against the man will rebel against all the crazy left wing ideology, and it will then become rebellious and cool to be more of a conservative. It's just, I don't know if it's too
I think
little
that's
too
what
late, but yeah, on
I
a
think
long
that's
enough
what the
pendulum
whole
timeline, 100%.
I think that's what the whole kind of Groiper trad cath thing is the pendulum swing of these guys who are just so done growing up within a world that tells them that everything about them is the cause of what has the planet's ills, you know, when they've done nothing but grow up and eat cereal and watch cartoons and
Yep.
play on video games and stuff, and all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I'm evil, and I've done all of the things in the past. I need to pay penance for all of this. And what do you expect? You're going to get that pendulum swing. And I think that these guys are the symptom to the, you know, on both sides, there's symptoms to the bigger, greater problem of evil in the world. And you are going to watch that pendulum go back and forth and back and forth. And it's an unfortunate thing, but it's a necessary thing for recorrection, you know. And I think that's what we're looking at with the Sean Strickland in the world, you know, who just gets on a microphone and just goes, hey, everything about you is the antithesis of everything about me, and I'm going to point it out in the most vulgar way possible.
Just,
you know,
do your research and guard yourself against the twisted ideologies that pop up in opposition to a major evil, because at some point you'll be choosing between a lesser of two evils, and that's no way to be. There is a moral code.
There's a one true path, man.
You can subscribe to that or not, but you know, history's fun at repeating itself that way. So just don't fall hook, line, and sinker for every oppositional thought. Just heads up.
Yeah.
You had a movie? I saw, dude. Okay. I saw the trailer for this and I was like, oh, sick. It's a Sean Patrick Flannery movie. This looks cool. And then I finished the trailer and went, I'm not going to watch that.
No, and you shouldn't.
I'm just not. That looks like
this
devil's involved, and there's like.
This is not an angel movie.
Yeah,
this will be.
Feels. This is like I'd rather watch sports or something.
Yeah. And that being said, let me give you a little history. I have been a Sean Patrick Flannery fan because of certain roles like Young Indiana Jones and then Boondock Saints. And then like Powder, even like he was the bald albino kid in that movie Powder from the 90s. Lots of different movies that he's been in that he's been fantastic in. He's a great actor. About 10-ish years ago, my tattoo shop in Seattle was doing one of the outside of tattoo convention circuit conventions, which is we would do either comic book or horror or sci-fi conventions or whatever, right? And we'd be the only tattoo shop there representing, and it was always fun because when you're the only tattoo shop, you're super busy, and it's always the stuff you want to do because it's all cool imagery based around horror and sci-fi, so they're always a blast. But you also, because of the sound of the tattoo machines, it's like moths to a flame, we come in contact with a ton of celebrities. So like, and we get invited to all the hangout parties and the green rooms and all that. So we end up spending a lot of time with a lot of celebrities. And me and my kids and my wife have met a ton of famous people because of that. One of these conventions was, I believe it was Crypticon. Yeah, I think it was Crypticon in Seattle. And they had a bunch of actors come in, and one of them was Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead, and it was like in season 2 or 3, so it was fairly early on, and he hadn't really, he was arcing, but he hadn't reached his peak yet, right? But and then a bunch of people from like a bunch of other TV shows and stuff, but he came over to the booth and wanted to get tattooed by me, and it was either going to be a cardinal or a wolf or something like that for his son. But what was weird is that with him was Sean Patrick Flannery, who was not on the guest list. He was not invited to this convention.
They're homies,
guest.
Right?
Like they're homies.
Yeah.
So he came with him, and dude, I got excited. I was like, "Oh, dude, it's the Boondock Saints here together. This is fantastic!" And I got to talk to both of them, and it was really fun. Got to hang out with them throughout the weekend, but I was going to make a joke that I was going to offer Sean Patrick Flannery a absolutely free tattoo as long as it was a portrait of Powder, which I thought would be super funny, like this big white portrait on him. But I didn't even bother making the joke because the dude was such a jerk, like over the top asshole. Like Norman Reedus was great. Norman Reedus was absolutely lovely human being. And you could tell he was annoyed by his friend because Sean Patrick Flannery was blasted drunk the entire time. He was just going into panels, like closed panels, and jumping up on stage, smoking cigarettes inside and making fun of them all for being nerds and like just trashing everything he touched and was just like being rude to everybody. And it was like really off-putting, and it created a personal vendetta against Sean Patrick Flannery for me forever from that point on.
Right.
So then this movie comes out, Nefarious, right? And this movie is it was based off the book written by a political columnist, and I think he works for the Blaze. His name is Steve Deese, and he's a writer and stuff. And he wrote this script, and they turned, and then wrote it into a book, and then they turned it into a movie. And I was hesitant to watch it, although all of my either church circles or political circles were like, you gotta watch this movie. They all went in groups together to go see it, and I just kind of avoided it.
Right.
But it did look interesting. And the premise of the movie is that a psychologist gets sent. He's not the regular psychologist. There's a reason he's sent to a prison in the South to go figure out whether or not the inmate that is on death row and is scheduled for execution, if he is indeed crazy or sane, so that they can go through with the execution. And he shows up, and he's obviously kind of he's
a staunch atheist, I'm sure.
Yes, he is. Yeah. And he shows up, and come to find out, the inmate is this guy named Edward, who is played by Sean Patrick Flannery. And the guy claims to be a demon, that he has possessed this Edward guy, and that he is the one responsible for all these things, and he wants to be put to death. And then goes about, and it could be a play, it could be on Broadway, because it almost entirely takes place in a dialogue with them in one room. And there's a couple of other scenes that outside, and a couple of outside characters, but not really a lot. The vast majority is set in that one setting. But that's
how you keep the cost down.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it was strikingly remarkable. The performances were incredible, especially Sean Patrick Flannery. Had this been a bigger production, had this been through a different production house, had this not had kind of a controversial same thing with like the child trafficking movie that we discussed before, had it not been in that kind of grouping, Sean Patrick Flannery would have without a doubt been up for an Oscar for this performance.
Well, if it was any of those things you just mentioned, he without a doubt would not have been cast in that role.
Right, exactly. So, but the performance that he put into this was, I almost have to watch it again just to watch for the story, because I was watching his performance so closely. It was incredible. It was him flipping between the two characters that he was portraying. And then his machine gun firing of biblical knowledge and of the humor that he put into that demon's kind of sick humor. And it was the best performance he's ever put out. And I don't really know what kind of impact it had on his life. That
was shot in like 2022, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
So, now that being said, really great movie. I think it could have been a little bit more. I think it was being a little too vague on certain points, but other ones. It was gut punches to society and to the system, and to what's going on within the world right now, and he predicts that the guy, the psychiatrist, will commit 3 murders before he leaves that day. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to commit any murders. That's crazy. And it is the end sequence with the execution sequence is one of the most brutal, realistic, bizarre, and well acted performances I think I've ever seen.
Wow.
And the problem is that with a lot of really great movies, they don't really understand how to tie it off, how to close it off properly.
Right.
And in this one, man, the last 5 minutes is really weird and felt forced.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, there is an interview scene where he's being interviewed by Glenn Beck.
Interesting.
Which makes sense considering Steve Deese, works for the Blaze.
Right.
However, Glenn Beck felt like he did not at all rehearse for what he was doing, that it was all off the cuff, and it felt super uncomfortable. Like he didn't really, it felt like a really weird attached ending to this movie. And so I didn't really care for the ending. I think they could have done that a lot smoother.
Yeah.
But they, and a lot more subtle. It didn't have to be so like, but I guess how do you inject the guy who's financing your movie into the movie without doing it in this regard?
Right. Forcefully is the answer.
Yeah. And so, but overall, I mean, out of, what's our rating system? What do we use?
The megs, dude. How many megs? Yeah.
So at 1 out of 10 megs, I would say that this probably was for me a solid 8.
8
good
megs?
8 megs.
Wow.
Yeah, 8 megs. Like it was, I mean, it kept me completely glued to one room.
Yeah.
Like the dialogue alone, the acting alone, the storyline, the script. There was a couple of spots like, the warden was obviously, not the best actor.
Sure.
And even the psychiatrist was okay. He's been in a bunch of other things too, and he was okay, but he was supposed to be the vehicle for the viewer,
right?
So you couldn't put too much personality on the guy, or he would have been a different character. You're supposed to kind of inject yourself into that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had to be kind of a blank slate, and I think he served that purpose pretty well. But yeah, it was phenomenal.
Nice.
8 megs, man. It was a great movie. Do not recommend for you.
Yeah.
Knowing your stuff, but I would just read. You can read through like the plot line on IMDb or whatever. They'll give you like a play-by-play of everything. So there's a whole synopsis section in certain areas where you can read through the entirety of, and that way you can kind of get what he's talking about.
I was going to ask you, did you give the Sandman a spin?
Not yet. That's actually something that I was planning on doing. And I got sidetracked because I polished off that Titans show after 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And
it must be finished. Yeah.
It must be finished. And it wasn't, not super awesome, not super bad, but and then I got lured in by another show that you would hate entirely, which is the old Hannibal show.
Oh, with Mads Mikkelsen?
Yeah.
I actually watched all of that.
Yeah, I watched all the way through, but I haven't seen it since when it first came out.
Yep.
And but I remember absolutely adoring it due to atmosphere alone. It's
Yeah, oh, yeah,
gorgeous.
yeah. It's beautifully shot. Mads Mikkelsen is like secretly one of my all-time favorite like actors. I love that guy. He does the craziest shit, and he's
Yeah.
wonderful in all of it.
But they dropped that on Hulu, and so and I
okay.
was combing through. So I might actually start Sandman tonight.
Give it a spin.
So
See what you think.
yeah, cool.
Also, I'm pretty sure it's tonight because I said it was January 23rd. One of the talk shows, because I don't really watch them anymore. Kimmel, Fallon, somebody.
It's Kimmel.
Alkaline Trio's playing tonight.
Yeah. First time, I saw that too. I've been getting ads on my phone. I was like, no way.
Because their record is like out now or on its way out now.
Yeah.
And I was like, no shit. And they were like, whatever, Kimmel. Yeah. So yeah, I was going to say, check that out later on or watch the highlights tomorrow or something. But
yeah, I can't watch Kimmel, but I'll watch Alkaline Trio play live.
Same.
So, yeah.
And I could barely do that after the last time we saw him too.
No kidding. Yeah.
Paul, who's on this podcast earlier, said he's seen them, I think, twice after that show because he was there that night, long before I knew him. He was at that show when they were hammered before Smoking Popes played or whatever at the El Corazon.
Yeah.
He was there that night. And he's like, that was fucking horrible. But I saw them after that a couple of different times and
yeah,
you got way better.
Matt was having a real bad night that night,
it was not a good look. Yeah.
So, but I actually got to tattoo the Smoking Popes the next day though, so it worked out for me. So, and then I tattooed both of them out in Chicago too.
Nice.
So, but yeah, so I will be starting Sandman tonight.
Give it a spin.
I'll be watching the Jimmy Kimmel clip. Outside of that, I don't know. I think, my work week always starts on Wednesdays. So like that pretty much consumes me. And I've been getting old, man. Like normally I'm up till 2 or 3 in the morning watching stuff, just wide awake. Like, whoa, what's next? Click. But lately I've been falling asleep in movies and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, I'm turning into my dad. And, it's the reality of my life. So
yeah, it's crazy. I wish I could sleep on planes and in cars, and I can't. So like the couple of times in my life that I flew to like the longest flight I was on was Seattle to Amsterdam, and then from there we connected to Rome, Italy. And the problem was I didn't sleep the whole time on the plane because I just couldn't. And then by the time I landed, like my internal clock reset, like it's the middle of day for you now. And it's like the middle of night where we were. And that was just brutal. But I'm to the point too, where I'm just constantly in a state of wanting to go to bed. But then every time I get there, I just kind of lay there like, just go to sleep, dude. Just go to sleep. No phones are on. I'm not doing none of that shit. Just can't sleep. But maybe I'll turn on a movie and
you know what cures that? About 10 years in teenagers.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that'll get you real tired. So
I'm sure it will. Well, yeah, I'll let you get to it, man. We had a pretty rapid fire night, but it was a good one, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I know
this is my highlight every week. I love this.
Same.
So
breaks me away from all the work and the crazy and all that stuff. But
hey, before we cap off, there was one topic I kind of wanted to hit.
Yeah.
And it was Desantis.
Oh, right. Our boy.
Yeah.
He just
how did you feel about that?
So this is gonna sound kind of, I don't know, disgusting in a way. I expected this to happen because I've seen this happen a lot, right? Like suddenly all of the primary guys that the numbers are just not there, they just start to wilt and then support the next guy behind them until there's one left standing or whatever. I regret that he didn't get further. I regret that he didn't have more broad of stroke messaging than the quibbles and the bullshit arguments with the guy from California. Newsom. Like all that stuff it was kind of like, I don't think you're necessarily helping your cause, even though it's airtime. I think you're just prepping a future candidate for president to get better at arguing on stage in front of a television camera. And they had to have known that. Like, I'm not a political strategist. I probably could be, but it's like, I mean, I could see that coming. So I don't know. Like, I saw this coming. I kind of figured it would be inevitably going that direction. I just wish that it didn't.
Yeah. I thought it came a little sooner. Yeah. It came a little sooner than I had anticipated. But it was inevitable. So, now basically I think that, they are hoping that Haley takes like California and in all the primaries and caucuses in kind of the bluer regions of the country. And everyone's going to switch over just to vote for Haley so that she gets the nomination, because they really do want basically a Biden-Haley runoff, because they don't want Biden to win, but they can't have him step down because Kamala will come up. But they know Haley will be their war hawk. Haley will be the Democrat with the R by her name. They know that, so they're like, we can work with Haley. We can't work with Trump. We can work with Haley. Right. So let's lean into that real hard. And if that doesn't work, then we've got Michelle Obama on the back burner to try to finagle in here with a double dropout of Biden and Harris. And then we'll have an emergency caucus and bring her up and try to do that if Haley doesn't win the primary. And so that's kind of my prediction of how that's going to go. So if Trump wins the primary, then they're going to pull out the big guns with Michelle Obama and try to inject her in some kind of legally ambiguous way in order to get her in there and pull, because they know that Biden's going to lose to Trump. There's just no way. And the turnaround that man has had in every demographic, right, is just, it's uncontainable. They can't do anything about it. So they need to replace him with either Haley or somebody else. And obviously the whispering is that Michelle Obama is gearing up for that. So we shall see. But that's kind of how I see it floating out. But
or this was the real play that was the super long game by Mike Johnson. They both got to drop out so I can take over. Speaker of the House wins. Let's go. Who the fuck was this guy? That Johnson guy, right? Where did he come from?
Guy came out of obscurity and he goes, "Oh, it's been my plan."
Dude, he's here now. The most brilliant political mind in the history of our time.
Mike Johnson.
Mikey J, dude, we just didn't even know. No, I lament the fact that, like, it couldn't have been maybe a little bit better of a run from somebody who, you know, I had political feelings for, we'll say. I also, to be honest with you, wouldn't have hated Mike Pence. I don't particularly care for Mike Pence. I don't particularly care for Donald Trump, but I do like their policies. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I expected it, but to your point, just maybe not this soon. You know, it's what we got to run out till November, and we're really going to have this thing locked up by probably September. We'll have an idea on both ends, but yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, we shall see. But I just wanted to get your feedback on the Desantis thing. Outside of that, I think I don't really have anything else. I'm going to be going we're on Friday night. We're going as a shop to go hang out for one of our artists' birthdays. Cool. Go see another hockey game. So we're gonna go see the Spokane Chiefs play, but pretty much that's it. My work week will be work and whatever the kids have me do. So.
Yeah. Nice. Cool, man.
All right. Well, that's it for me. What do you got?
That's it. Everybody be safe. Think a lot. Do a lot of thinking. We appreciate you being here.
Can.
You can check us out pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube. We've been streaming. If you want to come say hi, you're welcome to. Modern Relics. Or drop us a line. Modern Relics Podcast at gmail.com. Yeah. Bye, everybody.